for my cross-cultural communication comparison, I'll be focusing on Australia and Saudi Arabia, Australia being my reference culture. For the sake of time and depth, I'm only going to look at 3 worldviews, those worldviews being egalitarianism versus hierarchy, masculinity versus femininity, and high and low context. Australia tending towards egalitarianism, Saudi Arabia tending towards hierarchy, both cultures tending towards masculinity, and then Australia being a low context culture, Saudi Arabia being a high context culture. A quick but important note is that I will be talking about the predominant culture in each of these countries, not because they're both large countries and they probably have diverse populations and many subcultures. So it was sometimes difficult to clearly identify where communication might go smoothly, especially when it comes to norms, because they initially seem similar, but there may be different understandings and different ways to demonstrate what we would consider the same thing. An example of this being the use of honorifics. In Australia, honorifics like sir, madam, Mrs., or Mr. are used generally and upon initial meeting, and then Australians tend to be quick to go to first name basis. And this can be an example of their egalitarian society or their egalitarian worldview. Honorifics don't command respect alone. Whereas in Saudi Arabia, honorifics can be a significant part of their hierarchical society. Honorifics are to always be used unless being addressed by a close family or friends, and it is disrespectful not to use them. And both of these cultures are masculine cultures in the sense that they might view competition similarly, as well as putting work first. And now, areas where I see there being problems is the difference in their egalitarian culture and their hierarchical culture. Australia is masculine and egalitarian, which means they value achievement, but they also value humility, which means they might downplay their achievements. Saudi Arabia tends to be a masculine but hierarchical culture. So they also value achievement, but they also believe that achievement demands respect and acknowledgement. So I can see there being a misunderstanding if a Saudi Arabian talks about their own success too much, because Australians don't tend to brag about themselves. Whereas in Australia, not acknowledging a Saudi's achievement might seem disrespectful. Also, with Saudi Arabia being a high context culture, there are very many nonverbal cues in their communication, whereas Australia depends mostly on their verbal communication. I can imagine a Saudi taking meaning in body movements that are unintentional, that are subtle or unintentional. And I can see an Australian not taking notice to body movements that are significant. And if I were responsible for coming up with some sort of solution or a way to prevent these miscommunications, I would suggest that an Australian practice convergence by acknowledging that maybe different people should receive different treatment. And I would suggest that a Saudi try to acknowledge that all people are equal and that all people deserve to be shown the same amount of respect. And then in regards to nonverbal communication, if an Australian could be aware of their movements and the possible symbolism behind them, I think that would go a long way. And then if a Saudi could help if a Saudi could use more verbal and direct communication, I think the Australian would appreciate it.